These Community Development Initiatives Oversight Committee. Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year, Happy New Year, Happy New Year. If I could have your attention, please, thank you very much, and ask those who are in the audience to go ahead and find a space. That would be fantastic. A couple of disclaimer statements for those of you, many of you know, I'm Dr. Stephen Holt, and I'm the privilege of facilitating our process tonight. So a couple of disclaimer statements. Disclaimer statement number one, this is a meeting that is open to the public. It is not a public meeting. And what that means is you have the opportunity to kind of eavesdrop and hear the transparent process of what is happening as this oversight committee works through the issues associated and assigned to their work. There is a space on the agenda where you can have public comment. And what we would ask for those who may want to have public comment is that you sign up to do so, and there is a form at the back in order to do that. If you have not signed up already and you don't have an agenda, please do. It's on one of those round tables in the back. We'd love to have and capture your information so that you know when this committee is convening, and you're also made aware of the work that is going forward with the committee. And I appreciate your presence. On the screen, you can take a look and you will notice that there are principles of agreement that we operate through and operate from, work from. And that is specifically how this group does its work. I won't talk through them. We can each read. But it helps you to understand how we do what we do, as well as how to engage in the public meeting moment. Or I should say in the public comment moment, which you will have a time limit of about 2 minutes to share your thought when we get to that point. Tonight we've got a lot going on. There's a lot happening in tonight's agenda. We've not been together since September, if you can believe that. So it's been a few months since we've sat down, seen one another, and we will work through as many of the items as possible. There are a couple of folks in the environment tonight that we want to make you aware of. Some people who are new to Prosper Portland and want to highlight them. Court Morse, who is the Equity and Inclusion Program Manager. Welcome, Court. Welcome to the work of Prosper. And then Brooke Mintire, and he is the Senior Business Finance Officer. And you may not have met her. A couple of years ago, the Director of Social Equity, Policy, and Communications was open for recruitment after, I think it was John Jackley, right? Yeah. After he left. And Myra Areola was selected. Welcome, Myra, for this work. So these are some others who partner and participate in this process. It'd be good for you to get to know them. All right, I think that's the clearinghouse items for us to be aware of. Let's do roll call around the table and identify all of the Oversight Committee members who are present, beginning with my left and going around the table.
Jennifer Huang.
Gwen Thompson.
Haben will do.
Dorsey Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Alicia Posey.
Karen Ward.
Maurice Roming. Oscar Arana.
Kara Stoudemire Phillips.
Wonderful. And our staffer,
Kimberly Moreland.
I should say project manager of this great work. So welcome. Again, we've got a lot to go through, and at this point we will defer to our co-chair, Alicia Posey, to ratify the minutes.
Does everyone have a copy of the minutes from the last meeting? Can we just take about 3 to 5 minutes to read over those? Okay, just about 30 more seconds. All right, are there any questions or clarifying comments?
I have one. It has me listed as not being here in October, but I was actually here.
All right, so Yvonne will amend that part. Anyone else? All right, great. Then we will accept these minutes from last meeting.
Excellent. Meeting's approved. Meeting minutes approved. There is a partner presentation tonight of the Hill Block Project Working Group, and we have one of the co-chairs here to go over some of that work. I'm going to ask Bryson Davis to come to the table. And Bryson, if you would help to, for those who may not be aware, when we talk about the Hill Block, where that is, what that is, and kind of give the overview for some of that work, especially for those, again, who may not be familiar. Welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Dr. Holt. So the Hill Block is a piece of property. It's about 1.7 acres, just a few blocks to our west. It is or was owned by Legacy Health. And after discussions with the city, they've decided to basically donate that block of land to be developed to help kind of reverse the effects of gentrification, especially those that were facilitated by the building of the hospital initially. And so our job as the project working group is to do pretty much everything to get the work going. So we're going to pick the developer, just determine what's on the land, and work with people to get funding to get things on the land. Right now, we've kind of organized everything, and we've got the funding to do our initial set of work. We just got some grant funding from both the city and Meyer Memorial Trust. And we are starting our community outreach phase to get the community's input on what they would like to see. And we are also starting to figure out sort of what sort of steps we need to take as far as the next step in determining what's going to need to be done before we put anything on the land, and who is going to be the developer to do that.
Thank you, sir, for giving that overview. If you'd like to give an update kind of around the work, the subcommittees, identifying what those subcommittees are, maybe speak a little bit to the work of the other co-chair who is not here tonight.
If I could just interject real quickly. Lakeitha said she's on her way. Do you want to wait for her, and we can come back, or do you feel comfortable continuing on?
Either way, it doesn't matter to me.
So maybe we have a report out from one of our subcommittees that's already here, and then come back to the Hill Block Project to give her some time, and you guys can present together.
That works for me.
Excellent. So we'll change the agenda around. Thanks, Bryson. We'll pull you back up in just a moment. Thanks, Alicia, for that insight. Appreciate that. Why don't we go then to our first subcommittee report out, and that will be for community outreach and Gwen Thompson.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. So the Outreach Subcommittee met a few months ago, and based on a stellar presentation by the Seoul District, we found that they showed not only sufficiency but proficiency in the desired skill levels and experience that we're looking for in terms of a navigator for our outreach effort. And as a result, we are, can everybody hear me okay? All right. Making the recommendation to move forward with a contract to the Seoul District for navigation. Please refer, committee, to your packet. There's several documents there that I want to draw your attention to. The first being just a description. So if you look at the top, it says North by Northeast Community Development Initiative Oversight Committee Recommendation Form. And I believe this is our first effort at creating a recommendation form, so that in itself is a move forward for this committee. The description of action is the selection of a community outreach navigator to improve community outreach to African Americans and other people of color. Connect priority populations to prosper Portland's grants, loans, programs, and business property owners and residents. There are 2 recommendations, including Soul District, but also a 3-year contract in the amount of $100,000 per year to the Soul District Business Association, formerly known as the North-Northeast Business Association. In considering that, there are also 2 options. I want to draw your attention to the second part of the page. The first option is to initiate an RFX process to identify additional community outreach service providers. And the second option is to select a vendor from our flexible services, racial equity facilitation services. So we are asking for a vote tonight. I discovered that an hour ago. So yeah, you guys are under a little bit of pressure, but take as much time as you need to read over these additional documents. The first one would be a flexible services, racial equity facilitation services. So then you can look at this and decide which of these organizations, and Kim, you might speak to that.
We went through a process where we identified several service providers that could provide equity training, but it also includes community outreach and a variety of services offered by local consultants who specialize in racial equity facilitation services. But those services also include public outreach and meetings. And so this is a process that you could utilize instead of going with a 3-year contract. These are people who's already on our, what we call our listserv.
Thank you, Kim. Option 2 is, again, to move forward with an RFX. And if you draw your attention to, I'd like to draw your attention to the Request for Information, Bids, Qualifications, and Proposals document. And there it describes what an RFI is, an RFB, an RFQ, an RFP. We actually spent a lot of time in our outreach committee learning about the differences in each of those.
Procurement officer, Dan Sparrow, spent time with the subcommittee kind of explaining the different processes we have for selecting vendors. So he did a nice summary of the various processes that Prosper Portland used to select service providers. I also want to just mention that the facility, the racial equity facilitators, providers, their focus is really racial equity and not community outreach. If you look at the list, only one of those companies actually offer, or 2 offer public outreach and meetings, facilitation.
Yes. So there's quite a few documents, but if you turn the page over that says Northeast Community Development Initiative Oversight Committee Recommendation Form to the second side, you'll notice that there are 2 options. One is to accept the subcommittee's recommendation. The second one is to not accept it. You can write here, it's optional, your reason for disapproval. You can also write in an alternative recommendation. But since we are voting tonight, unless you want to pass this over to Kim.
So I think
You
we
don't
probably
need
need to
to.
open up the floor for questions.
I also want to mention, if you have questions specifically for Flossin Media, they are here tonight to answer any questions you may have.
Who is Flossin Media?
Soul District is
The
actually,
Soul District, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
actually.
thank you for that. It's
Mhm.
the Soul District.
Yes, John Washington, the leader of the Soul District, is present, so if you have any questions you'd like to direct to him specifically, he could be more than able to come and sit at the table. But for questions among the committee, we will use our normal approach where you turn your card on the side, and your questions would be directed to the subcommittee who's done this work and is making the recommendation. So any questions from the Oversight Committee members? Leisha?
Can you just speak to the process, starting from the beginning, so that folks will know how you even got to the point of having Soul District? Yes.
Thank you, Leisha. It was my understanding that the Soul District was coming to make a presentation to the Outreach Committee based on an invitation that they had received from Prosper Portland. We then received them in the meeting and were able to listen to the fine details of their experiences. We found their experience to be impressive, and I bought for you all publication, and I'll just pass this around so that you can review it. If you don't mind helping pass it around. Which I believe is an example of not only the detail of their work, but also their experience. And you might be able to look at that and recognize some of the needs that we have as an organization in getting the word out about this Oversight Committee, as well as the grants and other products that we have. Does that help answer the question, Leisha?
Yes, so then maybe you can pick up from there, Kim, before you brought it to the, I just want to make sure that there's full transparency and that folks know
Sure.
the process.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things in our Prosper Portland procurement services, if there's a nonprofit organization that can offer services to our clients, there is you don't have to go through like a competitive bid process because they're providing a service on our behalf. It's open to nonprofit organizations only who offer a unique and special service that that we feel can offer, uniquely offer that service to our clients. And one of the reasons why the Soul District is one of those unique organizations is because they have an intimate knowledge of the African American community in Northeast Portland. Some of the members on our Flex service really don't have that intimate knowledge of Northeast Portland. And so it's very hard to find nonprofit organizations who have a community outreach focus and a marketing promotion that understand the unique challenges that this community face, and they also have programs and services that's already on the ground and have a network that we can utilize to create a pipeline to our services.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Yeah, I just wanted to backtrack a little bit to give a good picture of how we got to where we are now. But we've had a few outreach committee meetings, like 4 or 5, and we started very broad just by putting a wish list together of things that qualities that we would need and actions that need to be taken in order to really get the word out. And then Kim, putting the dots together, brought in Soul District to give a presentation pretty much to illustrate, their capabilities. And from that presentation, we felt that they met all of our requirements and what we're looking for, especially in the area regarding just a connection to the community, I think. And so that is how we got to this point.
Oscar?
Can you talk a little bit about the decision between like a 1-year contract that could be renewed, up to 3 years, and the difference between that and why just a 3-year contract off the bat too?
Maybe it might be better to answer that question.
And can you clarify a little bit what
Sure,
you?
yeah, curious to know if there was a discussion or conversation about, the difference between just offering a 3-year contract as opposed to like a year contract that could be renewed 3 years, depending on whether outcomes were being met.
Yeah, and I believe the contract does read that way, that it's, after each year, you can evaluate whether or not the outcomes have been met, and that the contract is renewable each year.
I didn't get that from their recommendation.
Oh, okay. We do have a scope of work that's attached to that was part of the meeting materials. I don't know if you guys have a
Yeah.
copy of it.
It's the one that begins, the first one is a purpose statement, so this is pretty much the scope of work that we're looking for the outreach navigator to perform.
At the top of it, Oscar, the third line says 1-year contract, 2019, 2020.
So it is a 1-year contract renewable for 3 years. We probably should have made that clear on the recommendation form.
Then I have a follow-up question, if it's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the scope of work, can you talk a little bit more about what sort of what hiring and managing community ambassadors means?
Sure. When we initiated this Northeast Community Development Initiative, we introduced this idea about having a group of community ambassadors who could be volunteers or someone with who are paid a small stipend, who could represent Prosper Portland in their various communities, and they would work with us to distribute collateral and various promotional material. Under this scope of work, the service provider would manage these community ambassadors and help create a distribution channel, if you will, of marketing materials and just maybe one of their responsibilities was to staff community fairs and just kind of representing Prosper Portland in at different community events.
Would it be accurate to say also that the kind of much of the information related to the community outreach navigator has been discussed with the group prior to, and so this isn't new scope of work or new purpose or new direction. It is the identification of somebody who can execute what was already decided upon. I think it's important to make that distinction in the subcommittee work, right? And it was also communicated what this work would be from the subcommittee to the overall committee historically. I know we've talked about that.
Yeah, and I would
a few
add
times.
too that this scope of work was derived also from the Northeast CDI action plan. It's one of our outcomes in the plan.
So I just want to clarify, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
The subcommittee has met, but in terms of what has been reported back to the larger committee has been very high level and not to this detail. So this would be the first time people are engaging with this level of information.
Correct.
Who are not on the subcommittee.
And to Oscar's point, I just wanted to add a little bit of color here, and just color meaning in the meeting itself, that Leisha is on the subcommittee meeting, and one of her ideas was the ambassadors. So we have literally listened to everybody's idea and made sure that that was in the center of the table. And we went back and forth on what was really needed, and it felt like we did a solid job of identifying the needs for the navigator.
And the community ambassador, it sounds a little formal, but really that role is to serve as boots on the ground and really to try to get like roots in the community and spreading the word that way. Because there are other avenues that we're going to explore, like social media and potentially, advertising that way. But I think word of mouth was the key component that was kind of missing.
And I'll add that the Community Outreach Subcommittee have worked hard to create a community outreach plan, and the Community Outreach Navigator will be responsible for implementing that strategy.
Leisha.
So I also think it would be helpful, Gwen, to, for the or for the whole committee to have access to that overall plan, so we can see where this fits in, how it compares, contrasts to other things that are going on. So if that's something that's completed, maybe you can share that out as well. I haven't been to several of the last meetings, so I'm not sure where we are, but.
I would be happy to.
So my second question is, the $100,000 for this contract, is that to include everything written in here? How is that $1,000 or $100,000 broken up? Is that including to pay for the navigators? It's including to pay for overhead costs for the
A portion of that will pay for administrative, only, I think, 10% of that, but the majority of that will go towards meeting the outcomes.
But this is all of the dedicated or allocated funding to this
Yes.
campaign? Hello,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm wonderful, and Happy New Year to everybody.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.
So can you tell us a little bit about your vision for this contract or this work, and maybe speak to the $100,000 and how you see that being spent?
Yes, and thank you again for having me and present. You know, we're we're really excited about the opportunity. It's just long overdue. We see the numbers, and we see that the Prosper Portland didn't quite reach their benchmarks on some of those numbers. But also the issue is how much time goes by before the services to the community are actually at large, or the community is actually receiving those services. And we're just a little bit concerned because the growth of Portland and the growth of this community is going to outgrow some of the people who have these homes and some of these businesses and that are not getting any service opportunities. I think that the other part that we're really excited about is the liaison, the ability to convey messaging about the change of the PDC, of Prosper Portland. I think this whole dialogue and language between the community and its acceptance of Prosper Portland and the history and all of that, I think it's a real significant reality that we need to start addressing and making sure that, because Prosper Portland has a desire, the city has a desire to come in and make those contributions, the reality of it is that sometimes perception lags reality by 5 years. So the whole idea is the community really ready, and what is the messaging and how we begin to somehow engage the community to accept what Prosper Portland has to present to our community, to build upon that and to change some of those things, and then our community gets some opportunity to build upon their properties, their businesses, and have these opportunities. So we're excited about that part of it. The $100,000 is just a starting point for us in a lot of ways, and what it will afford us to do is to begin to establish the construct that is required for us to engage the community, and also to hire some of those ambassadors in the latter part of once we've put together this opportunity to structure this thing in such a way to where we can get some outcomes. And then we'll go about hiring some of these ambassadors to continue that engagement.
Any other questions or comments? Yes, Gwen.
For the benefit of the committee, I would also like to share that the Seoul District's presentation was filled with conversations about partnership and the desire to work with us on the ideas that we all have and the ideas that we develop. So whereas I can share with you a full catalog of all of the discussions that we've had over the course of our meetings, I would also like to encourage you to think of your own ideas and bring those forward, and to be able to share with this organization or any other organization as well, and to view this as a partnership.
Maurice, thank you.
How many ambassadors are you planning on hiring? Are they part-time employees, full-time employees? And what's the ratio?
They would be part-time employees, and the goal is to reach 4 at maximum.
Okay. And they're
With, important, go ahead.
and they're from the community?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
Is this standard, like a standard contract for Prosper Portland? Is this a standard contract for Prosper Portland?
Oh, no, this is just a scope of work. We do have a separate contract that we'll be developing with our procurement department.
And how will it look differently?
Well, it has more legal language. It probably has language about, having insurance and just more. The scope of work will remain the same and the outcomes will remain the same, but it will have to go through Prosper Portland's legal contract process.
So, okay, so I asked that question because I have concerns about, on page 3, the asterisk says if funding allocations shift, Prosper Portland program manager and contractor may modify deliverable via email agreement and then contract terms. I'm just wondering, is there anything in here that talks about the role of this committee in terms of outcomes, in terms of renewing the contracts, in terms of recommendations going forward?
We can definitely add that on language, and I know we want to build in like quarterly reporting to the Oversight Committee so that you always have an understanding of where they are in terms of meeting our outcomes, but we could definitely add that language to the contract. And if anyone else want to send, any language that you want to see, just email me.
Okay, sorry, this is my last question. The scope identified below shall benefit the following eligible participants. And I'm bringing this up because of the investment and allocation meetings that we've been having and the information that's been shared in those meetings on a draft level. And the other people of color and long-term property owners, have a significant presence on some of the information that we've seen so far and the history of what's happened to the African American community in the URA. So I'm wondering if this language can be more direct, if the understanding with Mr. Washington and the Soul District can be more specific, or if you already have that focus in mind, but this right here to me just perpetrates that continuation of spending the money and given a reason why we're spending the money that does not include making sure that it's for African American communities. And I know that there's some tension between that language, but in this instance, I'm wondering if we can be more specific.
We have to be consistent with that language throughout all our documents, but we can definitely say that there's a focus on, African American, or even, I need to talk to the legal department about that, because we have considered maybe some percentages where 75 African American, 25 people of color.
So,
but I understand your concern.
So I'm wondering, in this particular instance, if you're asking, or if we're focusing on African American community members for a project or a specific outreach, why would that not be something doable for in this instance versus maybe in the plan or somewhere else?
I agree with you, and I just want to confirm it with our legal department. But I think you
Just got to make sure you can legally do it.
right.
Yeah.
But I will,
Yeah, it's a great point.
check into that.
Excellent point. Haben.
That was actually going to be my question, was this contract worked on in association with the legal department? Because if we're not doing that, then we go back and now we have to meet with the legal department. So I don't know what the urgency is in us voting for this today when those processes steps have not been taken.
Well, it's an urgency because we really need to start doing some aggressive outreach. The more we postpone this and delay this, the longer it's going to take to build that pipeline. And but we can, the legal review is just a typical standard process at Prosper Portland, and I guess we could once we develop that contract, we can send it to you for your review as well. But it's just a typical standard way of converting the scope of work into our legal framework. But I'd be, more than happy to, send that to Gwen, and Gwen can share that with the subcommittee prior to any signing of the contract.
I personally feel comfortable voting on this because of page 3 at the top. Time and time again, we've been talking about not being able to vote on things because they don't align with the action plan, but it's clearly spelled out that it says the success of the contract will be measured by the number of referrals that are approved according to the expected outcomes defined by the North-Northeast Community Initiative Action Plan. So that makes me feel good. And I personally think we should go ahead and vote on this. We haven't done much in terms of outreach. I think this is something that we should probably take a gamble on for a year and see how it goes, and then we renew the contract going forward. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Javi.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Really quick. Yeah, I definitely agree. Outreach has been kind of identified as one of the key subcommittees that have a very important role, high priority role. I was going to say, though, we could take a preliminary vote with a wish list of potential amendments to the language that's represented in the scope right now. I would like to see kind of, there's the nod to the North-Northeast Community Development Initiative Action Plan, but perhaps we could include some of the language that's in there directly in this document, and as well as finding the space in here to mention what the process would look like with the Oversight Committee, more targeted perhaps, like provide work plan and budget to Prosper Portland Project Manager, as well as, Oversight Committee for our feedback, to make sure that the checks and balances are in place. And then, yes, I think that was it.
Go ahead, and then
I just want to extend an invitation to all of the committee members here to attend our outreach meeting, and potentially, if we run the risk of going over the amount of members that can be at a meeting, maybe we can have a special meeting. It's just important to me that in addition to the document that I will be providing to each of you that details the scope of our conversations, that if you would like to participate generally, thank you, Karen, for your nod. We have 3 to 4 members at any one of our meetings, so there is room for you to participate if you choose to do so.
Wonderful. Haben, if you would, on your name tag, unless you have something new. You do? Okay. Oscar?
I just want to really thank the Outreach Committee for doing all this work and this due diligence. I'm sure it took a long time, lots of meetings, and I appreciate not having to do all of that work, so thank you for doing all of that. Just a quick question on what I'm guessing looks like the scope of work, this one-year contract, right? On page 3, I also want to make sure that we set up the contractor for success so that we don't sort of set up like really big goals that are hard to achieve, particularly because we've said that outreach has been very difficult. And I just want to make sure that, items 1 through 7, it seems, want to make sure that that's doable. Also, some of these seem much more like PHB goals, and I wanted to make sure, and I always get that confused. I know that some of it is PHB, some of it is Prosper Portland. I want to make sure that these are all Prosper Portland, or if some of these are PHB goals, whereas, PHB on this, making sure that they are also putting some of their, if we're expecting them to meet some of the PHB goals that.
That's a great point. Thank you.
And one of the ways to accommodate that is we're going to have a series of onboarding activities where the community outreach navigator will go through training so they can really have an understanding of the products and services, and even with PHB staff, they will gain an understanding of what the program entails and how to work with the appropriate staff. And And these outcomes come directly from the North Northeast Action Plan and been updated to reflect the quarterly reporting that we have worked on recently.
Excellent. We're about 10 minutes over our time, so Haben, and then Lisa, unless there's.
I think Gwen mentioned this, Jennifer mentioned this. This is a partnership. The first year is going to be a lot of working together towards the action plan. I think we can't expect them to reach all the goals within the first year. I think it is, as a committee, we have a responsibility to work with them hand in hand to achieve this. I think the committee has done a lot of work. I haven't attended any of the meetings, but I know how much work goes into these subcommittees. And with that, I really do think we are bringing up questions over and over. I feel like I trust all the work they've done, and the reason we have subcommittees is for them to do the deep digging that we are not able to do on a committee level. So I personally say that we go for a vote, and we vote on this issue.
Thank you very much. Lisa, did you have any? And then we can move.
So I just want to clarify two of my thoughts. The navigator, choosing a navigator is one part. The details and the expectations and the results and the outcomes are a different part. So I think that we can vote on the recommendation to whether or not to move forward with the Seoul district. But I think spending maybe a little bit more time just, going through this and adding or taking away. The outcomes that are listed here still fall very much in the vein of being outputs and not outcomes, which I think keep trying to get us to move away from. And just to say that we're going to do 4 more people, when we look at the number, when we talk about the investment allocation today, you'll see that numbers don't mean much, in terms of who we're affecting. So I'm great with moving forward and making that recommendation, but I just want us to spend a little bit more time on what we want to see.
Lisa, just a point of clarification. At what point do you think we would have that level of communication?
Which point? Of doing the detail?
Yes.
By the next meeting, if it's a subcommittee meeting. Like, so the next subcommittee will go back.
The next outreach?
Outreach subcommittee
Okay, good.
meeting, we'll go back and look at this, make it all good, do all the little tweaks we talked about tonight. We're going to vote tonight on the actual navigator, and then we'll just move it from there.
Excellent. Well, let me ask you then to turn your paper over and identify either accept or do not accept. And this will be simple majority. And we're doing it by silent vote, which is you're checking the box, literally. One box or the other. And then we will pass those over to Kimberly, who will tally. Thank you, Mr. Washington.
My pleasure, you all, and thank you again for having us, please.
Appreciate it. Glad you're here. So while you are doing that, we're going to go backward and ask now our partners to come. Our partner presentation from the Hill Block Project Working Group. We've got Lakeitha and Bryson, who are here with us. So if you would come and join us at the table. Oh, it's coming to me? I'll take it. Excellent. Project Working Group for the Hill Block. For those of you who don't know, I'll let you talk a little bit about yourselves, your role. Bryson did a little overview of the Hill Block itself, and then what you want to give as an update.
Okay.
So,
Do I need to press or no? Okay. I'm Lakeitha Elliott. I am the co-chair of the Hill Block Project Working Group. I was originally selected as one of the members at large. So folks were selected who were connected to lots of organizations, and then there were 2 spaces for community at large, and I was selected as one of those folks, and then became the co-chair along with Bryson. I am born and raised in Northeast Portland. I went to Jefferson for preschool and for high school. We're 5 generations in now at Jefferson High School. So I have deep roots and deep connections in this community. My grandfather and great-grandmother were impacted by the legacy issues, and so this is deeply personal for me. And what I said when I came on is that I wanted to, to honor my family's legacy in that, and to create something that my future generations can benefit from. And so that's the passion and heart that I bring to this work. I definitely, when I'm in those spaces, recognize, the history of Prosper Portland and the history of displacement, and definitely continue to want to hold Prosper accountable to the things that they say they are going to do. And so I often say that we're critical friends, that we're not just accepting anything they say or do. We've pushed back. Like, one of the original things was they wanted us to decide whether or not the property went into urban renewal, and really pushed back on, like, that wasn't our role. That's not what we were selected to do. And we were selected to create something meaningful that honors the African American community, and something that works to increase the prosperity for Black folks in Portland. And so that's our focus. Whether or not it goes in the urban renewal space or not, we need to vision that and be prepared for that. And so I'm going to keep doing it and keep pushing, and yeah. Sure.
So we've got 2 subcommittees on our project working group. We've got the Community Outreach Subcommittee, which is chaired by Lakeitha, and we've got the Development and Finance Subcommittee, which is chaired by myself. And for an update for what we've done on the Development and Finance, we're starting to kind of figure out what education we need to bring to the group in order to make the decisions that we need to make regarding developer selection and what's going to need to be done on the property. And we're also we're finishing up the final pieces of the grant award that we got as we manage the budget as it goes through.
And so in the Community Outreach Committee, we are just now preparing to embark on deeply engaging the community. We've held back on going out into the community until we, again, once got our group norms together and began getting some clarity there. And then we're going to do some work for us on our end before we go out and engage the community, so that we're clear on our expectation and our goals on what's possible on the property. We're going to do a deep analysis of what else is going on. So we just saw that, there are 61 units being built just a half a block away. So we want to know all of the housing units that are being built, all of the businesses that are coming in. Meyer is coming in. What are their goals? Do some analysis of what are the businesses in the community, so that we can be clear on what we want before, or we can be clear on what we can and can't do, or what some of our priorities are before we engage the community. So if we see that there are 300 units being built within 10 blocks, we might not want to focus on housing. And we want to be able to, when we engage the community, be clear about that. We want to be clear that if we know it can only be 7 stories, we need to be clear about that before we engage the community, so that we're not giving them big hopes and dreams that we can't deliver on. And so we will do some outreach at events that are already happening. So Good in the Hood, Juneteenth, some of those opportunities where Black people already are, and engaging them. We're going to do some work in East Portland, and work directly to engage the folks who have qualified for the preference policy, because we know for sure that they've been impacted. And so we'll do that work, and then come back to the community with our report out about what we've learned and figured out. I think that's about it.
One of the things we talked about is the necessity and opportunity of partnership with some of the work, and how communication happens between the Northeast CDI and the Hill Blocks, and some of this is overlapping, and some of the work is very similar. So how we create that, I don't know if you want to speak to any of that, and then we'll open it up to committee members to engage.
Okay. One thing that we've met with Leisha once, and we'll plan to meet with both of the co-chairs, but do want to do that regularly. Again, one, to make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes, make sure that we're not getting different communications from Prosper or from the city, that we're, there's some accountability there in that process. But we're definitely open to, we would like to invite you all to one of our, we're going to host a day-long event and to invite you all in there so that the full committee can have an understanding of what you all are working on and what's going on. But yeah, we definitely want to be partners and not duplicating work, and yeah.
Questions, comments? Dorsey?
So back when they were trying to put the Hill Block project into the IKEA, one of the things was Legacy was donating the land. They also wanted to utilize part of that land. Is that still on the table? Are they still talking about that? Or have they completely donated it for the Black community?
So they have not completely donated it yet. Part of our work will be to determine who they donate it to. So whether that's an existing organization, whether that's a new organization. One thing we did push back on is that there is no promise that Legacy will have a space there. That will be part of the community engagement conversations. And so in our language of our charter, we put in the possibility of a Legacy space, but we also put in, or another community-based health opportunity or something. But it's not a given that they will be on that site, and it will really be based on what we hear from the community. And we will have an overview of what Legacy, like what are their other plans for the other empty spaces that are close by, and what are their kind of long-term goals too, before we determine whether or not that's something that ends up being there.
Gwen?
I know you've met with a member or a few of the members here. I'm just wondering, have either of you thought of how we can support you in any way?
I haven't, not right off. Like I said, having the conversation with Leisha was good, because originally, again, like I said, there was a push for us to kind of hurry up and decide, like we needed to decide whether or not this went into the urban renewal area. And we were like, we're not going to do that, and we're going to be, want to know what other folks who are doing the work think before we do that. And so we actually just end up taking it off the table, and especially after talking to Alicia more about what you all were doing, that it was clear that we didn't want to step on any toes.
Yeah, I think the main thing is to make sure that both groups are on the same page as to what we're doing, so we can support each other's work and then not get in each other's way.
Any other questions go ahead, Jennifer.
So I was wondering if you guys had talked about or are discussing or considering the community benefit agreements between the contractor or whoever ends up being the selected developer?
Yeah, that is definitely one of the things that we're going to consider. It's not for sure where we're going to go with that yet, but that's definitely an avenue that we're going to be looking at.
We kind of have a space held as a contingent committee, again, as we get further down the line with the community conversations. But in our charter, that's one of the possible committees, is a community benefit. Yeah.
Any other questions from the Oversight Committee Project Working Group? Well, thank you. Thanks for coming tonight. Appreciate you being here. One of the things that's going to happen tonight is the selection of 2 new co-chairs. And so I think it'll be important to share one another's information and continue that dialogue and work for collaboration. So thank you very much for being here tonight. We are now going back to the subcommittee report outs, and we'll pick up with the investment allocation, which is chaired by Haben Waldu. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we tally? Do we have a tally?
It was unanimous.
It was unanimous, and so, Seoul District, congratulations. Well, this is fantastic. What it means is that the work of the committee as it relates to determining how to go forward is doing so, and all the details can be worked out. You know, the devil's in the details, or God is, depending on how you look at it. But it's absolutely necessary, and you'll get it done. All right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Investment allocation, Haben.
Sorry. The investment allocation subcommittee met a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I believe. And actually, we've been meeting for quite a while. And one of the things we've been doing is...
Hold on, Haben. I'm sorry. If I could keep, if those who are exiting, if you could do so without. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I apologize, Haben. We want to hear what you got to say.
Okay, no worries. So we met a couple times, and one of the things that we did is we reviewed the quarterly and annual report and worked on the format and making sure that it is pretty digestible and something that anybody can read and understand, especially the community at large. I think we have a copy over here. So if you guys want to look at, let me see, it's the document from Kimberly Moreland to the investment allocation. So if you look at the, it's formatted a little different than we used to get it. The action plan, the North-Northeast action plan is on the left side, and then each different categories that go alongside, or activities or programs that go alongside with it, are next to it, and then the status of the activity, how many clients are served, and what's the 5-year goal, and then total approved and our 5-year goal. So it's a lot more digestible, and it doesn't need a lot of explanation from a Prosper Portland staff at each meeting. So hopefully everybody appreciates the work that Kimberly and Amy, who is not here today, put in this to make it very digestible. What else did we work on? We also were supposed to remove the temporary freeze of the PIP. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that because although we've made a lot of progress, we feel that we still have a lot of work to do. We set up there. So we made a recommendation, and our recommendation is we continue to freeze the PIP until end of February, where we can see if the PIP can be resumed at that date based on the next 2 subcommittee meetings. The subcommittee feels that we've come a long way to get the information we need to make decisions. However, the work we've done so far, although it's been moving the right direction, we still need more narrative and context to support the data we've been provided. The quantitative data we've been provided has been amazing, but a written narrative to represent the qualitative portion would be awesome. Community engagement is important in this process. We need to provide the community access to documents, create a transparent system where they're able to provide feedback or give comments, possibly a survey or a public meeting where they can come and share their thoughts. 3, PHB will be meeting with us before the February committee meeting to discuss and provide background on why they need the additional funds from the money that was originally allocated for ADUs. We would need that information before we recommend how the ADU funds should be utilized. We might recommend allocating part, full, or different ways of allocating those dollars between the PHB request and the PIP loan.
So, one moment, if I could just pause, because I think there's a point of clarification around that ADU conversation, if that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
Clarify that, and then Leslie Goodlow's here from Portland Housing Bureau to address the ADU.
So, good evening, everyone. Leslie Goodlow, Business Operations Manager at the Portland Housing Bureau. So, we don't need more money for down payment assistance. It's just that the money has been sitting, and after discussion with the staff, with our oversight committee, we were wanting to transition the money over to down payment assistance so that we could increase the number of homeowners from 16 to 32. So it's not a matter of we need more money. it's a matter of a recommendation to move the money from one pot to another pot to increase the number of homeowners. So I just wanted to make that a clarification that we don't need more money. It was to increase the number of homeowners.
Um,
Right,
go ahead.
very important.
I was simply going to say that's an important clarification, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And part of the reason we wanted to meet with the Portland Housing Bureau in the subcommittee is because we have a lot more questions that the different members had. So it's to address those so that before the overall committee meets next month to have that discussion. So thank you so much for that.
That's fine.
Maurice?
And I just had a real quick question. So you said 16, so it's 100,000 per individual for down payment assistance.
It's up to $100,000 depending upon what they need for a down payment.
And so potentially if it's whether it's a house that, or if they only need 50,000, it could be greater than 16.
Correct.
So how is that then? So if we're saying that we're giving them what they need for a down payment, what I've seen so far is there's been 3 accepted that's at the $100,000 level. Have you looked at ways of having a deeper penetration so that those dollars can go further?
Well, most of the people that have received DPAL have needed the $100,000 in order to buy in interstate because of the housing prices. We're hoping for the folks that are at 80 to 120%, they may not need a whole $100,000 just because they have more income and they will likely qualify for a larger mortgage. But at this point, pretty much everyone that has received a DPAL since we increased it to $100,000 has needed that the full $100,000 in order to qualify to buy a home in the interstate URA.
Clarification point, 80 to 120% of?
AMI, I'm sorry, of the area median income.
Thank you.
And so it's the same thing, they just changed the name of it.
I'll save the rest of my questions for the deeper dive that we're planning on having.
Okay.
Thank you. Point of clarification, back to you, Hamid.
So with those points, we are going to temporarily continue the freeze till the end of possibly February, and then we will reconvene and we'll do a deeper dive into the different questions and clarification that the subcommittee needed to make a decision.
Okay. Kimberly, you'd mentioned you wanted to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that.
A couple of things. One, I believe we have to, when you make your final recommendation, we need to have that approved by Kimberly Branham to make the final decision. Also, I want you guys to be mindful that there are 10 people waiting to take advantage of the PIP grant. So I want to propose whether we could go with those 9 or 10 people who's been waiting, and then not accept any new clients, because they have been waiting since October to participate in the PIP program. So that means that their project can't go forward. But I would just like to propose that.
Leisha.
Can you tell us how many of those 9 people are African American or from the diaspora?
Yes. No, it's on another list.
And while she's looking at that, Jennifer.
Yeah, my question is probably along the same vein as Leisha's. Like, what is the demographic of those 10 people, and how much do they represent in terms of dollars that we would be spending?
Jennifer, I wasn't paying attention.
That's okay. How much?
Going to respond to her question, but
Yeah.
We have 6 of the 10 African Americans.
Is it 10
or African American.
is it 10 or 9, folks?
It's 10. 2 of them were phone calls that we're going to send the information to once we receive the the clearance to move forward. So the list that I have is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, it's 8. It doesn't include the 2 phone calls.
So is it 6 of
Six
the
of
8?
the 8 are African or African American. And I can,
Go ahead, Alicia.
Okay, I don't know what just happened here between you. You try to trick me. I see that. Okay, I guess my question, Kim, is how many people, okay, this is difficult for me to kind of talk about. When we met last time, I asked Kimberly about our different definitions of what freeze means. And she mentioned something about not talking about the program, or there might be people on hold. And there's a difference between what we were talking about when we said freeze in terms of not spending dollars, but not necessarily having people get ready to receive those dollars. So I guess I'm asking, of the 9 or 10 or 8 people, because you just confused me, how many people have a project that's been approved and you're ready to give them a certain amount of money?
none of these. None of these.
None of these people?
No.
So I guess I need to know why keeping a freeze on those dollars affects the ability for Prosper Portland to move forward with getting those people ready to receive dollars if and when we unfreeze the money.
That's a good question. And one of the reasons I think is you have to be careful about that, because what if we don't know what the final decision is going to be, and if you raise an expectation that they're going to receive funding, and so I think you have to be careful about starting the process when you don't know what the end result is going to be, and that's but we can I can talk to staff about that. And
I think Tori wanted to jump in.
oh, I'm sorry.
Good evening, everyone. The one thing I wanted to say, because I think you raised a good point of some of our projects, so if someone's doing a larger development, there is a lot of kind of room from the time they say, I want to work with Prosper Portland till they need funding. I would say with the PIP grants, one of the unique things and why it's actually so popular is it actually moves pretty quickly from the day you complete an application and you're eligible to the day money gets out the door. Sometimes it can be within a month to 6 weeks. And so to your point, if we say, yes, we'll move forward with someone and they're eligible, it won't take very long till they get to a point where the money that will need to be dispersed in order to achieve their project. Typically, yeah. It's a pretty fast turnaround. I think that's part of why it's popular, because it's money that they can readily receive as opposed to waiting very long.
So if you were to accept an application, I don't know, the phone conversation. If you call tomorrow and you had that phone conversation with one of the applicants, and how long before that phone conversation turns into money afterwards?
Probably, like Troy said, 4 weeks, because we meet weekly to approve the applications. And so if Nixie, who's our coordinator, send them an application, they turn the application around. We meet every Tuesday to review those applications. We get approval by our manager. And then once that approval, they're assigned a project manager, and then they do a scoping with the client, and then you have an official letter of agreement. So it could take, from the time they called to approval, about 4 weeks.
Great. And then, but they're not guaranteed that they'll be approved for the money at any point.
No, they are. So like when the application comes in, as Kim said, every Tuesday or so we evaluate. If it's approved that day, then we begin the process. You'll meet with your project kind of coordinator who will help you understand the scope of work, just again remind you of here's what's allowed within the grant. Those are several conversations, but soon thereafter that, they identify a general contractor to do the work. The project can begin to start pretty quickly, so.
So we're meeting again in February.
Before the February committee meeting.
Yeah, I
Is
think
your
you
mic
guys-
on?
Yeah, you guys probably have about a month between your
Thank
next
you.
meeting, so I don't think it's, again, this one is unique because I think if it's the larger projects, it might be 6 months out. So we
Right.
get that. But on these PIP ones, they are a little sensitive. Part of the strength of them is that you can quickly move forward. So in that case, we did want to give you the space to have a conversation, which is totally fine in doing your due diligence, but knowing that it might bump up against, if you guys note something with the additional narrative, like, I don't know, we started the ball in terms of expectation for a particular client. It could trigger for them a sense of, man, you guys told me this was going to move quickly, and now it's stalled. So we just want to be sensitive to that and make you aware of that. That's the main reason why we raised that. So
I think my concern, Kimberly, is we have more information now. We still have not had time to sit with that information as a whole body and not really as even a subcommittee. The money there's not a lot left to be allocated in the PIP grant. And from the information that we have here, the larger amount of money that's gone out the door has not been to majority African American property owners and or business owners. So I would caution or urge us to err on the side of taking our time instead of this sense of urgency especially if that time is a month. Not in 6 months or, another 2 months, but a month.
Yeah.
So that's just,
Troy say that we can wait till the end of February, is that what I'm?
Okay. Can we then, or are we ready then, to address the recommendation that is in front of us? Haben, did you want to say anything specifically in regard to this? Just in point of time, we've still got 2 big items that we need to resolve.
I just want to say the investment subcommittee, like most of the other subcommittees, we've been doing a lot of work. We've been going back and forth, and to be honest, we thank you so much, Kimberly and Amy. They've been doing a lot of work to provide us the data in a way that's digestible and we understand it and giving us clarity. But again, time and time again, since we started this process, our problem has always been context. And I think, again, it comes again. So I think we're just looking for a context and a narrative to support the quantitative data that we have, and then we can move forward. And I feel like if we are doing what's best for the community and we are putting this freeze in place because we want to serve the community well, I don't think allowing ourselves 30 more days to get all the information we need to make an informed decision and go forward is a lot to ask.
So then, what I'm going to ask of you is that you will make a recommendation on this sheet. So it is to agree with the recommendation for temporary freeze, or if on the back you see to disagree with the temporary freeze. If you would check the box, literally, and pass it around, we will tally that information. Thank you very much.
I got all 3 of them.
Okay.
Did you check a box? Thank you. If you could hand me that, wonderful. Let's take hers. And we are going to go to our next report out. Maurice, we've got you slated for 10 minutes. Just again, point of our meeting, we still need to deal with the co-chair piece, so we may go a little beyond our allocated time. So I wanted to make sure all of us were aware of that. Mr. Raming.
Okay, I'm pretty sure I can go less than 10 minutes. So we had talked about just doing this impact study, and so we met multiple times to discuss this. Actually, we got the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability involved, some of the data, which I think we're going with a deeper dive later on, some of the data, and I would love for us to also share this with Portland Housing Bureau. When we talk about all the stuff that we're doing to help the community, what the data does show us is that there's a sharp decline in both African Americans renting and homeowning since we're at 1960s levels right now. And so when we talk about also income levels, and that's one of the reasons why I was talking about actually expanding and looking at home ownership as how do we make sure that we're getting the biggest impact rather than 16 or 30 people, because the reality is that's just a drop in the bucket. We have to think of more creative ways of having better impacts. So right now we have about 2,000 in the URA. I believe it's 2,000 homeowners, African American, and I think this committee's been used to hearing people say, well, there's no more here. The reality is that they're still here. There's about 2,500 renters, and so we still are in this area. So one of the things when we go through this, and again, I want us to be able to share this out, is to allow people to know that yes, we're still here. Although there's been great growth in the URA for jobs, it's not reflected in our communities. Actually, our incomes have suffered. And so there's this weird dynamics that we'll get into more detail and more involved in our future meetings, but I just wanted to give everyone a little bit of the flavor. And so we got to do better. We can't just say we're going to serve 32 people, or we're going to serve 16 people, and we got to look at multiple different avenues and be more creative in our ways of approaching this issue. Thank you. I'll take any questions.
Questions or comments? Go ahead, Dorsey.
Who's on the committee?
Me, Alicia, Haben. You're not on the committee?
It's just me and Maurice.
Oh, okay.
We have invited, Quinn expressed interest, so we invited, so there's still room for people
Okay.
if you would like to join.
Please make sure your mic's on.
Next time.
Thank
Me
you.
too.
All right. We got more members. I did my job.
Your report was so riveting. Excellent. Any other comments? Oh, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, committee, for the hard work that you've done on this. I just want to ask, because I know we have a limited amount of time, what other insights you might have gleaned that has created these kinds of dynamics that you haven't stated?
Well, one of the things, like I said, that really stood out to me is that the median income for African Americans within the URA is so significantly lower than the 80%. But yet, when you look at that median income and we start talking about down assistance of payments at 125% of median income, that is above the 80 percentile for African Americans. So we really just shrunk that pool when we start talking about that group, right? And so that's where I look at it and say, we got to broaden that pool. The other thing that really stands out to me is that in the URA, job growth is pretty expansive. Utilization of African Americans is not. And so when we talk about homes, we also have to talk about jobs. And so we can't just talk about one side of an issue without actually talking about the other side of the issue as well.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any other comment for Maurice? So question for you. You said there will be ongoing deeper dive. I would presume that is the next subcommittee meeting.
So there's a subcommittee and a general meeting. So we basically want this whole committee to kind of go into the details of this so that we all have a clear understanding of what's at stake, what's going on, and how we can actually allocate these dollars to be more effective.
Thank you.
I was just going to add on to that staff from the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability will be presenting on that at a future general meeting.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. Any other comment related to that? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Kimberly, you're going to give us the result of the recommendation.
The subcommittee recommendation was passed with 7 votes to accept the subcommittee recommendation and 2 votes not to accept the subcommittee recommendation.
Thank you very much. So the PIP will be postponed until end of February.
Yes.
Excellent. Yes, Maurice.
Are we going away from the green, red flashcards?
I think I can't really answer that. I think around the recommendations, the intent around the recommendations was to capture it through writing. I don't think it's been a decision to go away from a process of using the green and red. Maybe you can speak to that at all.
So are you asking whether we should use the red or green, or?
No, I prefer the other way, but I was never really a fan of the red-green. I like Robert's rules, but I was just trying to figure out what the format is. And so, are there at some points ballots or are they flags? And I don't care which one. I would just like to have consistency.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
And this is our first time using the recommendation form, so it's up to you guys. It's whatever process you prefer.
Wonderful.
I'll leave that decision to the new co-chairs.
Okay, so let's move on to that.
Yes.
If we're ready. Are we ready to move on? Okay.
One thing I know about this committee is we like consistency as a committee. So I don't personally care if we do the vote, whichever. I second Leisha. The new co-chairs can fight about that. With that, I want to say, committee, thank you so much for allowing myself and Leisha to be the co-chairs for the last, I don't even know how long it's been. It feels like it's been 10 years. But it's been probably closer to a year. But we want to say thank you so much. We will not be running again to become co-chairs. We feel like we've done a lot of work to lay the foundation, and now it's time to pass on the torch to the next 2 co-chairs. We'll still be in the committee. We will be supporting whoever takes on those two positions. We want to be there to be cheerleaders, supporters, and motivators. But we feel like it's time to pass it on to the next 2 people who will carry on the torch. It's been, I won't say it's been a glamorous job, but it's been a lot more work than both of us anticipated. Lots of meetings, lots of phone calls, at times very emotional because we're representing a community that we really care about, and it's not just about us. Sometimes it's taken us out of our character and who we are as people because we are very, protective about our community. But overall, it's been an amazing experience, and I feel like we've grown so much as people. We've gotten close as co-chairs, and we've had tough conversations with staff and with our committee members and community members. And overall, it's been an amazing experience and one that we feel that other people should experience. Thank you so much for allowing us to represent you, to partner with you, and to work with you. I didn't think I was going to get emotional, but yeah, that's all.
I think we should give our co-chairs a hand. Good job, good work. Thank you for the lift. Leadership is exactly that. Leadership is a lift. Hopefully you've had an opportunity based on the email. Did everyone see the email from Kimberly Moreland identifying and outlining the work of the co-chair? Did everyone get a chance to see that? Yes?
Dr. Holt, can I just, before?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
I just wanted to share a few words on behalf of the Prosper Portland staff with respects to how Haben and Leisha have been really amazing leaders in this work. I guess the word picture that comes to my mind of what your role has been over this last year and some change on a project that was full of a lot of potential landmines, right? With respects to your engagement and all of you participating in doing work with an agency that is really trying to shift the narrative of how we show up, but has a very deeply painful past in terms of our complicit, participation in impacting many of the communities that we are with this action plan, trying to not necessarily right all the wrongs, because we can't with 32 million, but at least trying to acknowledge that through a different kind of investment. And yet we jumped into this halfway kind of knowing what we would want, but also at the same time, so much of the way in which this group is formed and how you are working is very new in a lot of ways. And so I just want to say from our end, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for giving voice. Thank you for being relentless. Thank you for bringing your full self to these spaces. Thank you for showing up as strong women of color with your intellect and your recognition that this goes above and beyond just you, and having your LinkedIn page look a little stronger with your volunteerism. And I think I would say that for all of you, but the word picture that comes to my mind. What was that? There's that what? No, we don't pay you anything. And so, but I think the word picture that comes to mind is when you see like a space shuttle or a rocket take off, to go to orbit, it really is that first, few minutes where so much of the energy is actually expended to get it off the ground. And then once it's in the atmosphere, everything else after that is almost easy peasy in many respects, because there's not as much pressure pushing against it, and the air is different. And I feel like so much of what we have today, it is about all of you, but it also has a lot to do with Alicia, you showing up a year and a half ago with Shanisha and Shannon and saying something about this doesn't smell right? It's been you Haben, ensuring that we have the data, that we have the consistency, and you guys have helped this group get off the ground. And so I just want to publicly say we are deeply appreciative of your leadership in this way. And hopefully when we look back 10 or 20 years from now, we will say not only did we do a better job, but more importantly, we were really in the presence of some emerging and strong and present leaders that we all benefited from. So thank you, ladies, for your service.
Thank you, Leisha. Yeah, thank you.
So I'm not going to talk because I did a lot of that already tonight. But I just have one more quick request from my fellow committee members. I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask for the opportunity, after I have a moment to step back and not be in the work, to provide a written document, like a report or feedback back to you and to Prosper Portland about what Haben and I have done, what areas we think may be some improvement, where we think we've been successful, and then be able to share that with you guys maybe in a month or two after we've had a little bit of time to step back from being so engaged and have a little bit of time to just spend on that. So I'm putting it as my last act on the floor, a vote to see if you would accept the report from us maybe by March or so, just with a little bit of feedback.
Let's do those cards. Let's go green, red. Let's go green, red, green, red, green, red. All in favor, green. It's a green light. It's 100%.
Thank you.
Accepted. Thank you.
We will continue to work in the subcommittee level. We'll still be in the committee, and we'll be still supporting whoever is in this role. This does not mean we're stepping away and off traveling somewhere. We're still going to be around. We're still going to be dedicated, and even more dedicated because we're supporting two of you guys to be the leaders next.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. We are using another ballot for this particular process. So my first question was, did everyone get a chance to, read through what the co-chair's role entails? Yes? Yes.
Do we pass this to Kimberly?
We will be passing those in just a moment. Before we write names down, there are two things that I need to ask. First is, so since everyone got a chance to read through it, I am not going to read through the information at all. So my first question is, are there any members who are absolutely saying, I am not willing to serve in this capacity? So do not write my name down. I am not willing. We know about you, Leisha and Haben. We are aware that the two of you are not willing to serve in that capacity. All right. So everyone else then is willing to serve in that capacity. Wonderful. Wonderful. Is there someone before I know names are getting written down. You guys are jumping the process. Are there individuals who are saying, I'm really interested in sitting in this chair. I'd love to be a co-chair. Are there some members here who are saying, please give me this opportunity to continue the great work that has been launched by Leisha and Haben, and I can push the buttons from here. All right. Well, then, I'm going to ask you to write the names of committee members you would recommend. And the way it's going to work is based in the simple majority of the names that are identified. They will be the new co-chairs identified or recommended. Did we say we're not recommending people who are not present? Because sometimes you get voted on through absence. You should have been at the meeting. You just got selected to run the show. We did not. Okay. All right. Beautiful. Good work tonight, everybody. Good work tonight. We've got 2 more things to do on our agenda, and one of those is public comment. And I don't think we have public to comment. Have anyone that wanted to share anything?
Looks like Tyler's coming up.
Okay. No? Nothing? Nothing? Nothing to say? No? No? Okay. Well, I will say something. Oh, okay. All right.
Hello.
Introduce yourself, please.
Bonjour. My name is Court. I'm enrolled with the Sault Ste. Marie Chippewa Ojibwe Anishinaabe Nation. I'm equity manager at Prosper Portland. I've been there for 4 months. I just wanted to say hello. My job and role is to provide equity training and understanding to our staff. We have a lot of skill sets, and we also have a long way to go to kind of create equity metrics. And as Tori was reiterating, how do we restore justice? And so it's a very tall order, and it's going to take a lot of work. I'm the first position of my kind to be full-time focused on this effort. I'm just available to get coffee with every single one of you if you don't want to. I know you spend a lot of time on this, but I am gaining perspective so that when I have an analysis of where we need to go in this work, I know what your experience has been. We also have a new community engagement person who's going to be doing a lot of work with the various committees too. So I get to work with Kimberly and Tori and this amazing staff. And I just want to make myself 100% available to anything that you might need or want to talk about. So that's it.
In court, you will be passing out your business cards to everyone. Is that right?
Cool. Yeah, I got
Excellent.
it right here.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Take advantage of court. Were you having a comment, or you just liking your name on there? Come on, have a seat.
Yeah. Leisha and I are free these days, so we can do coffee with her.
Yeah, so you've got more time.
We have a lot of time now.
Ms. Goodlum.
So just as a piece of information for the CDI, the Northeast Oversight Committee at their meeting this month approved a recommendation to go forward to Prosper's board to include the Water Bureau property in the URA. And we met today with Kimberly Branham and some Prosper staff, and that will be going to their board in February. So just so that you're aware that that's going to go forward to their board.
Could you identify where that is? Do you recall?
It is on Syracuse. It's North Portland, and I'm happy to send you a map and show you the line of where it connects to the URA. There are no houses that are going to be impacted. There are no businesses because the line basically goes down the middle of the street. So it will not impact any current, I think there's only a couple residential houses that are even near that site, and then a couple businesses, but it will go down the middle of the street.
And the potential of homes that can be built, which are ownership opportunities.
Right. So when we have the funding, we will be building between 50 to 70 home ownership units. So probably townhomes, not flats on that property. It's just under 4 acres.
That could be it.
It's kind of addressing what you were talking about, creative ways to help get black people into positions of ownership. Yeah, thank you very much.
know if,
Gwen?
Gwen had a question for me.
It's the one that's North Portland next to St. John's.
Yes, it's out, it's at the very end of the
There's
URA,
Portland.
North Portland. It's, I don't know if you know, that's where the goats are, that used to be the Belmont goats. They're now out on our property out in North Portland. So if you want to see the goats, that's where they are.
Very good. Thank you very much. I just wanted to say to the committee, just in recognition of the work and the lift associated with the work, for all persons who volunteer, it never is as you anticipate. There's always a greater demand and a greater expectation, and it means something that you've stayed to the process, to stay committed. And just as a person who does this kind of work on a volunteer basis, I appreciate it. Yeah. So we've got one other thing to do, and that is to determine the next meeting. We need to identify. We will find out the chairs. Yeah, in just a second. But just in terms of point of work to do the next meeting. Is that something the committee would like to talk about, or is that something you want to defer to the new co-chairs to?
Are we not keeping the same? Oh,
We had put a pause. We hadn't. Yeah. No, please speak. Third Thursday of February, then? Okay, February 21st will be the next meeting.
Yeah. I think we should meet because we have the PIP grant that we have to resolve, and then the impact study, we keep pushing it back, and I think it's about time that we discussed it as a committee.
So it sounds to me like you're saying you're ready to re-engage on a regular basis, or at least for February.
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. At that point, the new chairs can decide.
If we are
Morris?
having it February 21st, I'm going to be absent that day, so.
I will be too. I'll be in San Diego.
You can't go, Karen? Yeah, you'll have to stay. You'll have to tell them that you've got an oversight committee meeting and you just can't go. Gwen?
Just because it's a new year and we're shifting to new co-chairs, I just want to personally thank you guys, obviously. I think that we all will and we all want to. But I also want to thank the Prosper staff as well, since it's a new year, and tell you how much I appreciate you. In a volunteer position, it's difficult for me to always recognize my own worth in that kind of space, since there's no pay. So thank you for always validating me, and I'm sure that you do that with the rest of us. And thank you for your facilitation and your leadership, and have a great year, everybody.
Thank you very much. Whole lot of love in the room tonight. It's a very good thing. Great way to start the year. Kimberly, let us know, have we come to?
We have.
Wonderful.
Before I announce that, I just also want to echo what Troy said about Lisa Hobbin, and just the Oversight Committee in general has been a wonderful work and very challenging and uncomfortable at times. But the more significant in my life, personally and professionally, I really have grown a lot. And I thank you guys for all the work that you do and all the time you have put in to move this initiative forward. I really appreciate that. The winners are Gwen Thompson and Maurice Rodman.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Excited about the work that we'll get a chance to do together. One of the things that Haben and Leisha referred to, but didn't give specifics around, is that there's a lot of interaction between us on a regular basis outside of the normal meetings to do what's necessary for this work. So I look forward to the time we're going to get a chance to spend together, and 2019 is going to be fun.
Thank you guys for your vote of confidence. Absolutely. Do my best to serve.
Excellent. Well, you got some good folks to refer to. So with that being said, believe it or not, we are back on time, and actually a little bit early. I think we're at the end of the meeting unless there's anything from the Oversight Committee. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.